Welcome once again, my name is Austin, and this channel is all about helping you to dig deeper and go further to better understand faith and film and everything that is in between. If that's exciting to you, make sure you click that subscribe button down below so you don't miss out on any future content. Starting things off at number 10, we have the movie Malignant. Malignant is a movie that was not on my radar at all this year up until I think the first trailer came out for it, and even that was only weeks, if not less than that, before the movie came out. I checked this one out on HBO Max on a whim because I had been kind of getting into James Wan's horror movies a little bit and wanted to check out his new one. Had it on HBO, so it was an easy win for me. And I watched it in the morning the first day it was released. So I watched it before there was really any early reactions or buzz about the movie out, and thoroughly enjoyed it and really had a great experience with it. I had a lot of fun with it. There's some really interesting fun thrills as well as some really neat twists and turns along the way. It's one I've yet to pick up for my own personal Blu-ray collection, but nonetheless is one I thoroughly enjoyed, was one of the biggest surprises of the year, and can't seem to forget it. Next, in the 9th slot, we have No Time to Die, the epic conclusion to Daniel Craig's James Bond movies. This is a movie that I had been looking forward to seeing this year, even though it was initially supposed to come out, I believe it was last year, but got bumped to this year. And I went to go see it with some of my family when I was there for the summer, and we got to see it in IMAX. And it wasn't a true IMAX screen, but nonetheless was an incredible theatrical experience. This is one of the most big and awesome, explosive movies of the year for sure. There's tons of great, incredibly well-constructed action, but at its core, there's a really good story to this movie as well. This series has done a really good job of deconstructing and breaking down the character and persona of James Bond. I've only been a fan of the movies of the Daniel Craig era. I've not seen, aside from bits and pieces on TV growing up, any of the old James Bond ones. But for someone who has been kind of growing up watching these James Bond movies, this was a great way to send off the character and Daniel Craig's portrayal of it, and it definitely hits my list for my favorite movies from this year. Next, in the 8th slot, we have King Richard. King Richard stars Will Smith in what might be my favorite performance of 2021. This gives the incredible true story of Venus and Serena Williams and how their father essentially planned out their entire lives of how they would be the absolute best champions of the game of tennis. And it's an incredible, inspiring, and emotional story. It's a movie I thoroughly enjoyed. My wife absolutely loved this one as well, and she's not quite into movies to the extent that I am, but we both thoroughly enjoyed this one. This is another one I absolutely plan to get for my own personal collection. I can't wait to check it out again, and this is probably going to be one of the top movies that I would recommend people to check out from this year if they missed it, because it's just an incredibly heartwarming story. It's one of the most inspiring tales that I heard this year, and I thoroughly loved it. Next, we have one of the best musicals to come out this year and probably in the past few years, In the Heights. I loved In the Heights. This is the first movie of the year I think I actually saw twice. My wife and I watched this movie 2 weekends in a row. The first time we watched it just the two of us on HBO Max. Loved it. The next weekend, invited some friends over and watched it again with them, and they all loved it as well. This movie is one of the most enjoyable movie experiences I had this year. I thoroughly loved the different characters in this movie. I love kind of the ensemble cast nature of this one. You just get bits and pieces of these people's lives throughout this summer. It's one of the most family-oriented films I've seen this year, and I loved the just cultural aspects of the Hispanic culture. I think it's so endearing how much family means to them, whether it's related by blood or just by relation of how impactful that person has been in your life. I think it's an incredibly heartwarming, fun, exciting movie. I love the music that goes along with it as well. I still think Hamilton is my favorite musical of Lin-Manuel Miranda's, and it's definitely one that continues to kind of pull up musicals for me, and they're not usually something I'm interested in watching. I'm definitely neutral towards them, but it's putting me more in the positive light. Next, in the 6th slot, as we wrap up the bottom half of my top 10 of the year, we have a movie that's very personal for me, as this series has been very personal for me, Roni Kenshin 5: The Beginning. Now, this is a really interesting movie, and the series as a whole has been really interesting because they did an initial trilogy of movies, I think about 10 years ago, and I just got into them them over the past year or two and thoroughly enjoyed them, along with the anime kind of companion for it. And then they did a fourth movie this year, as well as a fifth movie. So the fourth movie was concluding the rest of the story for that initial trilogy they made. And then this fifth and final film was actually a prequel that you get kind of the origins of the Kenshin character. And I thought it did a beautiful job of looking back on his life, all the mistakes that we've kind of had bits and pieces of who he was before the events of the regular Roni Kenshin movies. I thought it was thoroughly engaging and very relational as we get to kind of get a deeper dive into his character and the things that happened and that he did that kind of shaped him to be the person he chooses to set aside when he's later in life. An incredibly emotional story filled with drama, some romance, as well as crazy, awesome, brutal action at times. It's so cool to see kind of a different side of the Kenshin character as we wrap things up. So this movie and series has been incredibly impactful on my life over the past year or two of the character and story and themes that it focuses on, and I thoroughly enjoyed this conclusion. Can't wait to check it out again. All right, kicking off my top 5. First, we're going to talk about Zack Snyder's Justice League. This movie was an absolutely, truly epic story, epic in every way. There's epic story, there's epic characters, epic scale. It's a monster of a film running at 4 hours long, but it takes advantage of that runtime to really flesh out its story, its characters, and really get you invested in everything that's happening. I'm so glad we finally got to actually experience this movie. We can hold it in our hands and know that it is real and not just something that Zack Snyder says he has. So I thoroughly enjoyed this one. This movie will definitely be the go-to version of this story, and as much as there's hope that we might get a Restore the Snyderverse in the future with future Justice League and other titles, at the very least, I'm thankful that we have this one and that it's absolutely as epic and incredible as we hoped it would be, and that we just have it. It's so awesome to actually have this and have it be as good as it is. In the fourth slot, we have A Quiet Place Part 2. Now, the first Quiet Place movie was actually my favorite movie in the year that it was released, and this movie is equal to that one in almost every single way. It's such a great continuation of the story. It makes for a great sequel and the next natural step for this one. I thoroughly enjoyed its continued themes of the children carrying on the purpose and drive of the father after he has passed since the first one with his sacrifice. I love the way they continued the story and really focus on the characters in a different way. The addition of Cillian Murphy to the cast is a great choice. I loved his character and the depth that he brought to it. He's one of my favorite underrated actors working today, and he kind of really does a good job filling in that gap of John Krasinski's character, but at the same time setting himself apart of him not being the same of what John Krasinski was, and setting himself apart to be someone different with different struggles and things and purpose. So I love this movie. They did a great job continuing the characters. I'm hoping we can get just as equally a third part of this movie when that comes out, but for now, it's going to take the number 4 slot for my list. Next, in the number 3 slot, we have what initially took over A Quiet Place 2 as my favorite movie of the year, up until, again, more recently, some other movies took that slot, but Shang-Chi is still one of my favorite movies of the year. I love the martial arts aspects of this movie. They did a really good job with the characters as well, and leaning into the Asian cultural heritage of the film as well. There's so many aspects that lean into cinema from Asia, which is really cool, and embracing kind of the icons of that culture and society, which is really cool and interesting, not only in the kind of aesthetic of the film, but the action. There's various different types of martial arts in the film that they embrace and take advantage of. And then beyond that, we have really good characters as well that I thoroughly enjoyed. And one of the best of the bunch is Shang's father. The villain performance is one of the best villain performances we've had. And it's just, they're thoroughly in-depth character. It's not just a flat villain performance. There's emotional weight to him. There's struggles you can kind of understand and empathize with him. It's really great. So this is just an all-around great movie. I still remember right around the time the movie ended in the theater with the people I was with, we were all like, that was really great. And just right off the bat, that was almost immediately one of my favorite movies of the year. So this has very easily held a very high place on my list, and I love this movie. So I can't wait to check it out on future rewatches. I've already seen it twice, but again, it's one I thoroughly enjoy each time I've watched it so far. Spider-Man No Way Home just has to get the number 2 slot for me as one of my favorite movies of this year. It's incredible what this movie managed to achieve. I will avoid any major spoilers on here for anyone who maybe hasn't had a chance to see this movie yet. I still know a friend of mine who hasn't had a chance to see it yet. So this movie did everything it needed to for me. The movie does a great job being the next natural progression story-wise for Tom Holland's Spider-Man character, while at the same time leaning into the nostalgia of bringing back characters like Dr. Octopus and the Green Goblin from previous Spider-Man movies. It does a great job with those characters of balancing the screen time of everyone. The movie never feels overcrowded, even with all the characters that it decides to bring in. It really leans into them well, while at the same time we get one of the best performances of the year in Tom Holland's Spider-Man. It's so easy to sometimes forget the performances that go into the Marvel movies because we're so used to just the typical kind of formula and we just expect them to be good. But Tom Holland gives what might be his best performance in his career so far. There's so much emotion and a wide range of things that he goes through and deals with in this movie that it's just a great performance all around. So again, I won't talk about any of the major spoilers on here, but this is a movie that if you have loved Spider-Man for the past different iterations of this character and how he's been brought to screen, you're going to absolutely love this movie. And I just cannot wait to see what they do next with the Tom Holland Spider-Man character, because where they left off in this movie was the perfect stepping off point for what's next. Finally, in my number 1 slot for my favorite movie from this past year, we have probably the obvious choice for me personally, Dune. This was an incredibly epic movie that was absolutely everything I had hoped it would be. Dune Part 1 was one of the most epic and also contemplative movies that I saw this year. As someone who had also read the book, it is very clear and evident that each member of the cast and crew thoroughly appreciated and embraced the story of the book as well as the characters and just wanted to do a great, phenomenal job with this adaptation, and they absolutely pulled it off. From a filmmaking perspective, the movie is brilliant and a masterpiece. It is a visual marvel. There are breathtaking sets and locations, incredible direction from Denis himself, and this is one of the most incredible casts that we got to see this year. It's an absolutely huge cast, but again, kind of like Spider-Man No Way Home, it never feels overcrowded. Each character gets their moment to shine, and I can't wait to see where it goes next as we reach the next step in Part 2. The movie moves at a bit of a slower pace, but it's very methodical and intentional in that, and gives you time to really understand what's going on with the story. And though the ending may have felt like a bit of a cutoff, as someone who has read the book, that is a perfect ending point and stepping off point for what is coming next. So I can't wait to see Part 2, and definitely Dune Part 1 takes that number 1 slot for me of my favorite year from 2021. So thank you for sticking around through what probably is going to end up being a bit of a longer video, but I wanted to get out my 10 favorite movies from 2021. I'm going to be doing a complete Blu-ray collection coming up soon, as I do every new year, so look forward to that coming soon. And I'm still hoping to get a live stream together with a couple friends to talk about the other great movies that came out this past year, because we had a great year for movies this past year besides my top 10, and I want to be able to talk about those. So I'm going to be trying to get that out in the next couple of weeks. I look forward to seeing that as well as my collection video. Thank you for sticking around to the end of this one. I'll see you in the next video.